and I hated it. I hated like the
Sorry.
actual job, the job of being a politician, like the job you're running for. I hated the actual legislative work. And so I thought, well, I love elections, but I don't love like a lot of the other stuff around politics. So when I was thinking about a book, that's what I wanted to do was kind of center it around an election and the campaign and the excitement and the high stakes of that. But I thought I wanted to juxtapose it with something that had a universal connection to it and was also a little bit lighter. And so this first love story, I thought juxtaposed with this high stakes, messy, adult, complicated relationship with the backdrop of a campaign, I thought was a very interesting intersection. And then I just started kind of playing around. I like writing romance, but I also like kind of mysteries and dramas and secrets and scandals. And I wanted to really straddle the line among genres with this story. So that's kind of how the broad idea for it came about. And then I started working on this in 2021. So it's been a book that I've been
Oh, wow.
working on and putting down and coming back to a lot. And the summer of 2021, when I started writing it, I was home. I had just recently left my law career behind and I was staying at home with my kids. And it was like still very pandemic-y. And so we were driving to our state parks in Virginia, state open. So I would plan these like day trips and we would drive all over the state. And I just fell, we had lived there for a couple of years, but I just fell so in love with how beautiful the area was. And I thought, oh, well, this is where I want to set this story, like in this very kind of bucolic countryside setting and the foothills of the Blue Ridge Mountains. But for me, one of the interesting things about Virginia is this intersection of class because you have some more rural areas, and then you have just this wealth that is like almost unfathomable to me,
Mm-hmm.
like these
Mm-hmm.
incredible estates, like and generational wealth. And
Uh-huh.
I was really fascinated by the intersection of that. And so I started kind of pulling at threads of like, your first love is a universal connector. Like gardening is this very interesting, you know, for hobby for some, lifestyle for others, but it seems to transcend class. And so that was something else that I thought would be a really good connector thread to pull into the story. And so I was just, driving around with my kids and plotting this book in my head, and that's how it started in 2021, and I've been working on it ever since then.
Oh, wow.
That's crazy. I noticed the difference in class you were talking about. I drove to Virginia. I was just there last weekend on the
On
Chesapeake.
the Chesapeake, yeah, in the
Yeah.
Northern Neck. Oh, it's
And
so
I
pretty.
drove from Alexandria to the Northern Neck, and I went from like major metropolis to total farm country to like once you get right on the water, these gorgeous mansions that are clearly like somebody's summer home. And
Yes.
it was all within like a 2 hour drive. It was,
Hmm.
I know that there's a lot of areas that are like that, but it was wild just to go from like section to section and see all the different people and all of the different homes and conditions. And it's a very interesting state, Virginia. It's
Yeah.
beautiful, beautiful state. So I like the setting in
Oh,
particular.
thanks. Yeah, I thought it was not only a beautiful place, and I wanted to really write this kind of transportive Southern summer book.
Hmm.
But I also thought it was one of the only locations where the story fit and the kind of the journey that the characters take, I thought was
Yeah.
really perfectly situated for this state.
Yep. Yep.
So the difference between them,
Mhm.
like it was a huge difference between them. Were they always Grant the wealthy one and Tess, the
Working
like
class.
yeah, as opposed to the other way around?
No, it was always that way, like kind of always like I because I'm such a consumer of the romance genre and I actually studied it. It was like my college thesis. I studied the genre. I
Oh.
really like taking those classic tropes and playing with them a little bit. So I knew I wanted to do kind of an upstairs downstairs dynamic here.
Mhm.
And my background, I had a lot of kind of fish out of water experiences similar to the way Tess did. I grew up in Alabama and ended up going to Middlebury College in Vermont. And that was just like such a huge
Oh.
culture shock for me. I had never been around kind of people with that level of wealth, and like
Mhm.
just there were so many things that were so different about that experience. But I knew I wanted to play into that theme of how class and how wealth can really feel isolating at times,
Mhm.
and how you navigate those situations when you're unfamiliar with them, and then how someone like we're doing spoilers, right?
Oh
Yeah, oh
yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
we're
Yeah,
gonna
girl read
talk
it.
about
Okay.
it a
Yeah.
little bit.
Yeah, like how someone like Grant's mother, Kay, can really be kind of someone who guides you into those situations,
Mhm.
and that tension that can exist in those circumstances, in those relationships.
So since you brought up Kay, the debate that we were having right
Before.
beforehand, we were talking about her as a character and
Yeah,
how this complicated relationship with her husband, or horrible relationship with her
yeah,
husband, turned her into the woman that she was, addict, maybe not the best parent for Grant, a better parent figure for Tess. But then we were talking about her death,
mhm.
and Lori asked, was it suicide or murder or an accidental death? And we all had very different opinions. So
Okay.
what was it?
Yeah, okay, so that's intense. So that was by far the hardest scene for me to write because it was such a traumatic scene, and I think when I put things like that in a story, it is never to kind of like traumatize a reader, but I do
Mhm.
think that in my life and every person's life who I've ever encountered, we've all been through very, very hard, difficult moments. And it is how you kind of find threads of hope, how you confront that hardship, move past that hardship, how it can be difficult, and how Grant really struggles there, and how it impacts his life forevermore, but how he has to move through that and cope with that. I think there is a bonding experience with a character, and it also can be a time when you can maybe you didn't have a similar experience, but you can find something that you can relate to in your own life. So I say that because I wanted it to be it is a powerful moment for the character development, but I did not want to wallow in the trauma of it. I wanted to really have a delicate hand in that because I didn't, you know, trigger warnings are a big thing with readers, rightfully so. I didn't want to create a situation where it was so triggering for someone. I wanted
Mhm.
them to be able to connect enough with the character and then understand their journey and move forward. So, in we talked a lot about was, you know, Grant's initial suspicion is that Richard had something to do with it, and
Mhm.
that's part of their dynamic. And, you know, Richard seems very clearly understanding that she has just overdosed. But they kind of cover it up as she fell because that's the family line in the message. And I do not think, I did not write it as if Richard had a role in that. The way I did write it is that I do not think necessarily it was an intentional suicide on her part. I think she was just a deeply troubled person who drank and took some pills and took it too far. And it was what, for Grant, it was this lingering question of what pushed her so far? Why was she in this place to begin with? And he, for so long, you know, kind of carried this burden that it was him, that he was the reason that she had gotten to this place that summer. And it's only in kind of the discovery with Tess having to go back to this place that carried so many heavy memories for them both, where they discover that it was not Grant's burden on, it was not Grant that was traumatizing his mother so much. It was this, the demise of their marriage and the affair and the just, you know, betrayal, the unbelievable betrayal that she had experienced that summer.
Okay.
Yeah.
All
So
Which,
right.
where did everyone land though? What did people think?
part of me thought that because they said she fell,
Hmm.
part of me thought that maybe there was like some sort of like head injury
Mm-hmm.
involved. And so that maybe he had pushed her and
Hmm.
she fell. And then he kind of like put her in the bath and pretended that she like OD'd, and he had everyone in his pocket. So he could have done whatever he wanted and
And
nobody would have ever questioned him.
I definitely took it as like it was an accident. Like she was stepping in the shower. She was clearly not herself, and she slipped and fell and hit her head and drowned. I did not even think that she OD'd. I thought that was like a made up that was like an assumption that the dad made about her,
Mm.
Hmm.
because I couldn't. for a long time, I almost felt like he was painting her out to be worse than she was.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Grant as part of
Hmm.
that. So I totally thought it was an accident because I'm like, there's no way that this woman was going to
Right.
do this to her son on purpose. Like I don't know. I
Right.
thought it was an accident.
Yeah, I didn't think that
I
she
didn't
had.
think that she OD'd, but I don't know.
Yeah, I think that I do not think it was not meant to be an intentional suicide and an intentional overdose. I think she did take pills and drink and slipped and fell and died as a result
Okay.
of all of that.
Okay. Who was your favorite character, both to write and to
Um,
evolve?
so you spend so much time with the main characters when you're writing them. I think some of the secondary characters are the ones I had more fun writing. And I think that's true for a lot of authors. Tess was the one that I had very clearly in my mind throughout the whole story, and I thought initially I was just going to tell it from her point of view. But I thought Grant's story, if I was going to tell this and what I was trying to achieve in this book, he needed his story told as well. And I was I was honestly worried about could I do this? I don't have a lot in common with this guy, background wise, belief wise. Like I was like, how am I going to pull this off? And so I spent a lot of time having conversations with people to understand what his perspective might be like and really kind of digging into like the character work with him. And I was so surprised by how much I ended up connecting with, like, really building a genuine connection to his character and really enjoying writing his point of view in his chapters. And that was just came out of left field. So surprising.
Huh.
Mm.
Hmm,
Okay.
that's interesting.
Do you have a favorite character?
No,
I
I don't
liked her
know.
campaign manager.
Yeah, I like
You
Mara.
might forget.
Hmm.
Yes, I loved her.
Yeah.
I
She was
liked her
like, no
too.
nonsense, get it done. Like,
Yeah.
who
Yeah.
am
She's like,
I?
okay, like,
I'll bury the bodies. Like, what do you
yeah,
need?
Yeah.
Like, I really liked her.
I
She
did
was my
like
favorite
her.
character. And I did really like Kay. I really liked
I was gonna
Kay
say I
in
like
through
Kay.
her eyes. Yeah, yeah. Through Tessa's eyes, especially, I liked Kay.
Yeah. Because I think the relationship with Kay and Tess is Kay had so many hopes for her life that were so unrealized. And she gets this summer with this girl who has all of this potential and future in front of her. And she's trying to kind of make sure she doesn't make the same mistake she did and guide her in that way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I liked looking at Kate like through Tessa's eyes. I felt like it was like the first time in her life she could be herself without being judged.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um,
And I
I
like Cece. I like Grant's wife Cece too.
oh really?
I think there's a bigger story there of her and what she went through and what it would have been like to be married to someone like that. And I still feel a little like justice for Cece and how she must have navigated that situation.
I know I felt bad for
I
her.
did too.
I felt
Yeah.
really bad for her.
Mm-hmm.
Like
He's
especially when she shows up and she's like, this is what's going on, and it wasn't at all what she thought at that point, but like so like such betrayal. I felt really bad for her.
Yeah, I did. I felt bad from her almost from the beginning.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it was interesting writing those, like, as someone in her 40s who's married, writing those two marriages and the
Yeah.
two different couples in their 40s because they're very different relationships. And I
Mm-hmm.
think there's a line that Grant, says he like says something like, we used to have so much fun and now we have oatmeal and discuss our schedules. And it's like that demise of a middle-aged marriage of it just becoming, co-schedulers and
Right.
the way you just are kind of getting through. I think I've had, sadly, a lot of conversations with people I've known who've experienced the same thing. And, Dean and Tessa's marriage is the betrayal there is very different. And
Mm-hmm.
Very,
it's a mutual betrayal on, her failure to ever open up to him because of her own feelings, and then him, really just kind of seeing things in a black and white way and not being able to accept
Mm-hmm.
any type of mistake on her end.
so we actually were talking about that, and all of us were completely blindsided. We had no idea that he was the one
Mm-hmm.
that leaked the pictures. I thought 100% it was the
Grant's
dad.
dad.
I can't
Richard.
Richard.
remember his name.
Richard, yeah. Evil.
I thought 100% it was him. So we were totally blindsided. Why did you make that choice?
I think um To be honest, it wasn't in the first draft. It wasn't
Who
him.
was it? Who
Wow.
was it? Spill the details.
It was Caleb, who does not exist anymore. It was a whole other
Oh,
character.
Oh.
Okay.
Yeah, it was a
Okay.
whole other character. So that was so when I say in the first draft, this book has been through more drafts than you
Oh,
can
well,
ever
now I
imagine.
have so many questions.
Yeah, so I wrote, and my initial draft was a chapter from Tessa's perspective, a chapter from Grant's perspective in the present, and then Tess Grant in the past. And it was ping-ponging back and forth.
Wow.
It was really
Okay.
hard for readers to connect because there were so many jumps. So then I scrapped that and I wrote it all from Tessa's perspective. And then I scrapped that and I wrote it all from Grant's perspective. And then I scrapped that and I wrote
Wow.
it from the
No
third
way.
person. And then I came up with this structure, and this
Wait.
is what like really told the story.
Okay, this is
That's a
blowing my
lot to
mind.
rewrite.
But so let me ask you a question.
Yeah,
Did all of these iterations of the book have the same ending?
no.
No,
Oh my God. Okay, wait.
Okay.
My mind is a little bit
Well,
I'll
slow.
spill all the
Wait.
secrets. Yeah, I'll spill all the
Because
secrets. No,
our
very
next
different ending.
question was literally, had you considered alternate endings?
Okay.
So,
We have to answer all of these questions. Okay, let's go back to the Dean one and then we'll
Yes.
jump forward to the alternate endings, which is blowing my mind because
Yeah.
okay.
okay.
So why did you end up making the switch over for Dean?
Because I think, this book was about Tess and Grant's relationship. And for Tess and Grant to really kind of, I think, fully realize their relationship, there had to be a falling out with their spouses and a believable falling out with their spouses. Tess's betrayal of Dean was so significant that for it to there had to be kind of something else that balanced that out that because you know I don't feel the responsibility to write likable characters all the time. Like,
Mhm.
I think this concept of likability, especially of women, is, so frustrating. And the standard we hold women to, I think real people make
interesting.
mistakes, and every person I've ever made has made mistakes and has faults. And so I like to write real people. Um, but I think Dean couldn't be so perfect. He needed to have his own faults. And so once I figured out what was Dean's issue and how would he have reacted to this situation, then that's when it was Dean revealing it. And when I said it was Caleb in the first draft of it had a lot more of like kind of like blackmail mystery plot line. And I stripped all of that away because I really wanted the focus to be on the relationship and make it more of a
Okay.
relationship focused book.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, because the Dean ending, up until that reveal,
Mhm.
I was convinced that Tess's marriage was going to work out and his marriage was going to fail.
Yeah.
Like, I did not see that coming at all.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so now we need to know the other endings that were possibilities at some point.
Yeah.
So in the other endings, they go back to their spouses.
Oh, both of them.
Wow.
Both of them. Dean,
Wow.
she still wins. Dean joins her on the stage to accept the nomination, and he's by her side. And in the end, Grant and Cece are back together, and she's expecting another child. So
Oh,
that was an
wow.
alternative ending, and it was both of them really discovering that like they were never going to be each other's people. There was no path forward, and so they went back to these relationships. But yeah, but that to
Wow.
me didn't work for a lot of reasons because I think both of them had gone too far. And obviously when that ending was dropped away, then I worked a lot more in building out the relationship dynamics and
Mhm.
layering in more of the conflict between each of their marriages. And so the ending that is in the book now, that is the final ending, is the one that I felt like for Grant and Tessa's love story was the
Mhm.
only ending that I felt like was fitting and a true representation of where they could be at this stage. Like I
Mhm.
could have fast forwarded 10 years from now and maybe put a neater bow on it. But for me, I like the idea that I have an idea of where they are. I like the idea that maybe you guys are thinking about where
Mhm.
they possibly could be, like stories that stick with you where you're still kind of wondering about the characters, I think are very lovely. And so I didn't want a very neat bow, but I did want a hopeful ending. Like hopeful endings are always incredibly important to me. I want to thread hope through my entire life and in every
Yes.
story I read.
Yes.
And so that's where I wanted it to end. But with Tess very focused on well, both of them really focused on being better people. Like I hope they have a
Mhm.
lot of therapy in their future and they're
Yeah.
really healing themselves, but focused on what they individually need to do to get to the place
Hmm.
where maybe there's a potential for them to be together.
Yeah, I liked that it ended with them like writing letters to each other because
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
felt like I felt like they really needed to rediscover if there's a future for them
Mhm.
because everything that happened is based on when they were 17 and 18 years old. They were really, really young, like at the time. And first loves don't always last. And
Mhm.
especially when there was such an amount of betrayal and lying on behalf of both of them,
Yeah.
right? He totally ghosted her and she never reached out to be like, hey, I changed my mind, right? So both of them really, really betrayed each other like badly. And so I'm hoping, and I like the fact that they're writing letters so that maybe they can like reconnect in a healthy adult way that's not filled with like lies and deception, which like when you're 17 and 18 years old, what do you
Yeah.
know?
Right.
Yeah,
So
and the
what
whole
is that what you wanted? Do you see like if you had tied it up in a neat little bow 10 years in the future, would they be together still? Because that was a debate too.
um
Yeah.
I actually do think they could potentially be together in the future. Like I think they would both have to do some serious work, but I think there is for sure potential. Like that was always kind of the hopeful ending. But
Okay.
but for me at least, the whole point of the story, like was to write something that people enjoy. That's always my first
Mhm.
point.
Right.
But the secondary point of it is that we are, as a country, as a community, so divisive right now, and I find like a very, scary way. And I think that stories are bridges and empathy building tools and ways for all of us to connect. And if we just hear someone's label, like I'm a Democrat, I'm a Republican, or I'm pro-choice, pro-life, and that's all we do, and we end the conversation, then we're never going to find like a path back. It's sharing the stories, sharing the why, sharing what happened, why do you feel this way, that is the path towards connection. And so for Tess and Grant, it is just as you said, Jackie, like they don't talk, they stop. They say, I disagree with you, I'm disappointed with you, and then they stop. And the question is like, what if they had said, no, come back, let's sit down, let's talk through
Right.
this, let's understand each other more. It is not until 20 years later when they are
Hmm.
adults and they actually do unpack everything that they were thinking, everything that was happening. They share these letters and these stories that they actually do have a path forward and a hope for some type of future. And that was my kind of not so subtle message to try to send. Like, I disagree with people deeply, but I want to hear their stories. I want to
Right.
try to understand them. I
Mhm.
think that's the only way we can have some type of civil future for us.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
we all agreed that what we really loved about the book was that they're on two sides of the political campaign, and there's like a major issue that they disagreed with. And we really liked how it was central to the story, but without being a debate of whether this is right or wrong, right? These are
Mhm.
the decisions that the characters made, but it
Hmm.
is did not project in any way as your feelings and how we should be feeling about it,
Right.
right? So you did an amazing job of dealing with like difficult subjects, but making it as a talking
Mhm.
point as opposed to making it like a debate.
Right. And why their backgrounds would lead them towards different outcomes and different viewpoints on the same exact subject.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's so complicated. It's so nuanced. Like, there's no person that's like, yeah, I was born, pro-choice and that's it. And I felt that my whole life. Like, every person, it's such a complicated emotion and process and, events going through their mind. And so
Oh,
I appreciate that you guys say that because that was definitely my intention was to really come at this with nuance and care and sensitivity so that anyone with any views of this issue could hopefully approach it and read it and still enjoy the story. And then, gosh, in like the perfect world, maybe have a conversation with someone who they know has a different view and ask their story and their views.
Mhm.
Like that would be great. But if not, if they just read it and enjoy the story, then amazing. Like love that as well.
Right.
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 Was that difficult to write? Like, did you have people,
Sensitivity
yeah,
readers.
sensitivity readers looking over it and being like, no, this, you shouldn't word that this way.
Yeah, we did. We did. And it's really interesting because, look, I knew going into this, I wrote a book centered around a political campaign. There were going to be people with strong opinions.
Mhm.
My intent was certainly not to write propaganda towards one political position. I was not trying to write a position piece. I was not trying to write even a political diatribe. Like there's plenty of books like that. I was trying to write a love story and about connection. But we certainly did have sensitivity readers so that the goal was that people across the spectrum could come to the story. That's what we wanted. We did not want it to be a Democrat's book or a Republican's book. We wanted
Mhm.
it to be
Mhm.
something that anyone could come to. What's been interesting is that, you know, my personal views, I was worried were going to kind of come through too strongly. And so I was worried that it was going to read too pro-choice. Like that was what I was concerned about. And so we had I personally, I'm from Alabama. So like everyone I'm related to and know is conservative. And so I had family and friends read it. I had neighbors read it who have different political views than me
Mhm.
and say, to see how they felt. And then the publisher had sensitivity readers. What's been very interesting is that it has swung the other way, and a lot of feedback we've gotten from readers now is that they view it as like subtle right-wing propaganda. That I am trying to be, a
Oh,
pawn of the right wing, which was certainly
Interesting.
that
not
is
my intent and
interesting.
not my, it's been a wild view. I mean, look, readers can hold whatever view they want. It is your book now. But it was very surprising to me. That's not the reaction I thought I was going to get. I thought people on, the more conservative end were going to be upset about it, but that hasn't been the feedback that we've
Interesting.
gotten.
I
So
mean,
Wow.
I mean,
Huh.
so what's interesting, I was surprised. I mean, a little surprised, not surprised. I knew something had happened because of the prologue, right? And
yeah.
she's sitting there with like IVs. And then as soon as she found
Which
out she
I
was
forgot about the prologue,
right.
so
And
I didn't see
right.
any of
But
it
as soon
coming.
as she found out that she was pregnant, I was like, something happened. And I was like, no, you're not really gonna have like a whole thing when you go to have an abortion, like you don't end up like with trauma. So I was like, I think something happened because of her personality and because of like her such strong beliefs. I was very surprised that she chose not to have the abortion.
Mhm.
However, I was surprised she made the decision. I didn't view it as you being like
Pro-life,
pro-life.
right? As
Oh, yeah.
a
I
pro-life.
like
Well,
that's not
because
how I viewed it. I
Huh. Huh. That's so
it's
interesting. It's always so fascinating.
pro-choice. It's like a
Right.
choice. It's the
yes,
choice.
No,
yes,
it is a
yes,
choice. Right.
100%. That is exactly. She had a choice and made her choice for
Right.
what was
Right.
best for her.
Yeah. So, but it's been interesting. But I think that is my hope is that if people are upset by that, then they're having a conversation about it. Like, I love books that spark conversations. I
Yeah.
love coming to book
Yeah.
clubs and chatting like this. And so, if there are more conversations about whether people feel like should she, it's wild to me. Like people are like, should she have done it? Should she have not? Like people have a lot of strong views about all of that, and it's a character, but very strong views, and
Yeah.
so I get it. And so if it's sparking conversations, then I think that's great.
Because it was also very emotional,
Mhm.
as especially considering their relationship. And I could understand it because anyone who's gone to camp, when you meet someone, and I
Mhm.
mean, she met her husband at camp,
Right.
right?
Yeah, I
So
get it.
you go to camp, you meet someone, and your relationships become like very, very strong very quickly because you spend
Mhm.
so much time together. You're with each other all the time. So this was kind of like that. So,
Right.
you
Summer
know,
camp.
it wasn't surprising to me. Like their relationship was so quick and so fast and so emotional from the beginning.
Yeah.
So,
Before
And I
I
think they're both meeting each other at these like critical points of their
yes,
lives
yes,
where they each, there is like this insta love because like they're both fulfilling this hole that they were
yes,
yeah.
not getting emotionally from their
yeah,
parents at that time.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
Before I ask my next couple questions, I want to does anybody else have a question that they would like to ask?
I just wanted to comment on the um, pro-choice, and I
Mhm.
thought you were very neutral about it and just made it important that she had a choice. She chose one thing. It was okay to change her mind and do the other. And I didn't think you really, I mean, I thought you were inclusive of all views. So I think that's just people wanting something to complain about. So, it's like to each their own,
That was
but
such a nice way to say that.
I feel like you're in good company too. Like Jodi Picoult, when she wrote, what was that, 19 minutes? I think she had the same thing. She tried to come at it was the one about the abortion clinic where she came at it from so many different angles, and she specifically tried to come at it from every angle, and she was blasted left and right by everybody.
Yeah.
So you're in
Yeah.
good company. It's a difficult topic.
But I think
It,
I think you did a wonderful job
Mhm,
with it.
mhm.
Thank you. Yeah, it is. And I knew that going in, but I still thought it was an important story to tell. And so I think you just kind of you put on your thick skin and you move forward.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep. You know it's gonna be somebody's
yeah,
gonna say
yeah,
something, so
exactly.
you gotta just
Yeah.
keep going on.
Mhm.
Um, is this gonna be a movie or a TV show or
I
anything? Is
mean,
there any
let's
discussion about that? Because I
speak it
feel like this
into
would translate really well.
speak it into existence, right?
I
Yeah.
feel like this could be multiple seasons of a TV show. Multiple seasons. Like you could start off for the beginning, like you could go on, you could have like in between, you could be like
You
going
could
back in
fill out all the
time, you could
different
like fill it
characters.
out, you
Where's
could see
Caleb?
different
Bring Caleb
characters.
back.
Like we could go like
Yeah.
years with this.
Yeah.
After she
We
wins,
could.
their
It's the new
relationship. Do
scandal.
right, like
We're due for a political something, aren't
do
we?
they get
I
there?
know.
How
And
do
I
they
wrote
get
an
there?
article for Shondaland, and they love like, so yeah. I mean, I would love it. We've had like some fun conversations. Like, all that stuff takes forever, and like,
Mhm.
it's so who knows what would happen. But I agree. I think it would be a fantastic series or
Yeah,
movie and all that.
Fantastic
it
series.
really
Like
would
if
be.
this could be like years. Then we could get into like the political. We could see
We
like
could see
their
more of
thing.
their
Oh,
teenage
yeah,
friends. Like I really, this is,
totally.
yeah,
Yeah, that
I'm
would be
into it.
good.
Okay, well, I'm glad there
I'm
are
glad we decided.
conversations, and
Yeah.
we'll put it out there. We're gonna
Yeah.
manifest it, everyone
Yes.
collectively.
Yes.
What are you working on now?
So I'm in the beginning stages of something, and it's another emotional love story with this one has a bit of a cat and mouse mystery to it.
Ooh,
It's set in the deep woods of West Virginia and also the marbled hallways of Washington, D.C. And it's a little bit like Pelican
fun.
Brief meets Where the Crawdads Sing.
Okay, that sounds
In, love it.
fantastic.
That sounds awesome.
That's
Okay.
amazing. I'm
Yeah.
loving that.
When is that like scheduled? When do you have your eye on publishing that?
Like a couple years.
Um, yeah, so
2028.
yeah, so for every other book, this is my third book, and for every other one, I've had the next one written before the next one came out, and that was my plan for this one. I had a really rough fall health-wise. I was in the hospital multiple times because I had a blood clot in my brain.
Oh, wow.
So it was a rough year,
Yeah.
and my health was my focus, and so I've not
Mhm.
written the next one, but I've started it, and my publisher is very eager for it, and we're working on it, but I'm just moving slower. And the
I'm
tour
So
has
scared.
glad
been,
that you are
yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
I am really glad I am too. Yeah, it's one of those like sometimes I'm just like I cannot believe this whole year. But I'm just moving a little slower. And the tour has been so exciting, but I've been basically on and off the road since June, and that just takes up a lot of my energy. So I haven't been
Yes.
able to write this month, but I'm working on it and I'm excited about it and all of that stuff. So
Well, we're willing readers, so
Yeah, we're ready.
whenever it's done,
We're here.
we're here.
oh, yay, thank you.
We'll wait patiently, right?
Does anyone else have any questions? Because we're kind of going over time
Yeah.
as it is, but you're welcome to ask them.
No.
No, we're
Okay.
good. Well,
And
thank
if you have a question later, feel free to like email me or send me a DM. I try to respond to stuff on social media, so my DMs are always open.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
This
This
was
was wonderful.
awesome. This was wonderful.
This was so fun. Thank you
This
guys
was
for
so
Thanks
hosting.
so much.
All right. Take care.
All right. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye, everybody.